So, building habits, interestingly enough, is just like building a muscle. It requires repetition in terms of action, stable context in terms of environment. Very few people work out in the middle of the street or while driving to work, for example, and it requires rewards in terms of continuity. To build a muscle and make it bigger, you need to repetitively subject that muscle to contractile forces, ideally in some ritualistic space such as your local gym, park, or home, and reward that muscle's energy expenditure with growth by employing proper, consistent nutrition. In fact, doing any particular exercise well in terms of performance generally requires habitually trained and developed system 1 motor skills. So every exercise that you perform, it's like a microcosmic variation of something you hope to achieve on some larger scale. Get in better shape by building better movement habits. We also want to consider two psychology concepts or behavioral psychology concepts: friction and association. Friction generally refers to the idea of making an intentional action-oriented goal as easy as possible to execute in our environments. This is generally what's considered low friction, which is more relevant to habits we value and want to integrate into our everyday lives. There's also high friction, which is more relevant to habits that we might consider bad, which I'll touch on at another time. In a landmark study by a data firm called Distillery back in 2017 that tracked GPS cell phone data, they found that people that had to travel fewer than 3.5 miles to get to their local gym went to the gym more. And people that generally had to travel further than that went to the gym less. And this makes sense, right? The easier it is to do something that we value, the more likely we are to do that thing. When it comes to formulating new eating and fitness habits, this generally requires or means starting small and making the changes that are most convenient to you. Low friction in relation to me in this sense came in the form of LA Fitness opening a gym less than 10 minutes from where I lived at the time. That's actually one of the things that inspired me to get started. Before the opening of that LA Fitness, I had never even considered going to a commercial gym. It wasn't even a concept in my mind. It didn't hurt that I could go to that gym on the way to and from work. Convenience definitely came into play in terms of building my gym going habit, especially on those days when I felt like I didn't want to go for whatever reason, or I was telling myself I was too tired to work out. Association generally refers to what you associate the activity with. The tip here is that you obviously want to try to associate the activity with something pleasant. And this is obvious because if your mind has more positive associations with a thing, your brain is more likely to wire desire to do that thing repeatedly. What was essential for me in regards to association was music. This was towards the end of the 2000s during the Napster and the rise of the iPod era. I was really into underground hip hop, still am. That explosion in the availability of music made exercising so much more pleasant over a long period of time for me, because the best time for me to listen to new music when I wasn't riding around in my car was when I was exercising. So every time I found a new album or song or artist that I really loved, it got me amped to go to the gym or go for a run because I knew the workout that day would be a freaking breeze. People kind of take music for granted these days, unfortunately, so that might not be your muse. What other activity could you pair your workout with? Read a book in between sets. Listen to your favorite podcasts and lectures. Maybe a possible increase in productivity is a positive association you can make. Respond to business emails in between sets of your strength training routine so you have more free time later. Get creative with it. I can't emphasize enough how much this positive association helped me, and I highly recommend that you sit down and think hard about what kind of positive associations you can make to help you get your workouts in. Unfortunately, one form of association I can't recommend, and it's pretty popular, is going to sound counterintuitive to most people, is using a workout buddy. This is going to sound strange, but relying on a friend to build a habit can be detrimental because at some point your lives can and will diverge, on top of them possibly just not being as motivated as you to change. And you'll suddenly find your context disrupted and possibly unable to continue your workout routines as a result. Especially if this happens before the habit has had any potential to take root. When I first signed up with that LA Fitness that I mentioned before, I did it with the promise of having a workout buddy. We were both obese and out of shape, but we always talked about rectifying that. This new gym opening up down the street from us presented the perfect opportunity for us both to put our money where our pair of mouths were. And you could probably guess how that went, right? We consistently went for maybe 3 to 4 weeks. After that, it was a struggle to get him to commit to just going a day or two a week. He'd often cancel last minute with some excuse. If he wasn't going, I wasn't going. After all, we were gym buddies. Who's going to spot me on the bench if it's not him? Some sweaty stranger at the gym? Please. So, next thing you know, neither of us had been to the gym in months. Months turned to years. In fact, I went 2 years paying the gym membership every single month, getting more out of shape every single day, in hopes that someday my gym buddy and I would get motivated enough to start things up again. Because actually canceling the membership gave everything a certain sense of finality that we had both just given up. And we wanted to avoid that. Sunk cost fallacy and all that. And I'm sure this sounds familiar, right? Commercial gyms actually prey on this mentality. If every member that actually paid for a gym membership showed up to work out one day in a particular facility, that gym would have to close its doors that day. It wasn't until I just got fed up with relying on others to get my workouts in and donating to corporate gyms that I just said screw it, and I told myself that I was going to have to get comfortable with the idea of working out alone somehow. History's been written ever since. So, knowing this, if our issue is consistency, when we're getting started, we want to ask ourselves, what is the most repeatable action that I can take at the most convenient time of day, in the most convenient place, that I have a positive association with, that I'm willing to do several times a week minimum for the foreseeable future that will help me get started? What is the bare minimum that I'm willing to commit to? Here, I want to emphasize again the low friction concept of starting small. Check your ego. The biggest issue that most people have when they attempt to live a healthier lifestyle is that they try to flip the entire table that is their life overall at once. They fad diet and try rigorous routines that are of a very non-specific template, which is not sustainable for most people. When it comes to exercise and nutrition, start with one or the other first, preferably exercising and or moving. Once you have a consistent pattern of moving, the nutrition aspect will fall into place over time with some very rudimentary education, despite the subject's overall complexity, I promise you. Because food at the end of the day is just energy. More to come. Rest in power, Michael K. Williams. You will be missed. Peace.